Hello everyone, I am Iran and today you're going... Hello everyone, I am Iran and today you'll learn a new way of studying and understanding phrasal verbs. You will learn the meanings of literal and idiomatic phrasal verbs and how they are connected. Phrasal verbs are considered to be one of the most challenging areas for English learners to acquire. This is because many people think that their meanings are random. However, we'll try to find logic in them today. Now, let's get started. Some students ask whether phrasal verbs are idiomatic. The best way I can respond to this question is that phrasal verbs range from literal, transparent, sit up, to idiomatic, figure out. As you can see, there are two kinds of phrasal verbs, literal and idiomatic. If you want to improve your knowledge of English, use advanced phrasal verbs and have perfect English grammar, you need to understand the difference between these two types and know the connection between them. Literal phrasal verbs are the most common phrasal verbs. These have obvious meanings, literal meanings, which you can guess from the two parts the phrasal verbs are made of, a verb and a particle. Can you sit up straight, please? You might be able to understand this example if you know each individual word, sit and up. There are also idiomatic phrasal verbs. These have meanings that are less obvious or impossible to guess from the individual words. But you might be able to guess from the context. For example, you should be downstairs, helping your friend clean up that mess. However, if we look at phrasal verbs from a cognitive linguistics perspective, we can see that these two phrasal verb types, literal and idiomatic, are connected. Moreover, we'll be able to derive the idiomatic meaning from the literal meaning. This way, you will not always have to use a dictionary each time you want to understand the meaning of the phrasal verb. In most cases, you will be able to do it yourself. Cognitive linguistics aims to help to understand cognition in general and to see as road into the human mind. It claims that a conceptual understanding of languages and thoughts are formed through our experience in the world. Considering the ways our bodies move, we generally think of things being in front of us as anything in our line of vision or in the direction we are moving. If this fact is taken as truth, then there are a number of physical experiences that we experience directly with our bodies: heat, up and down orientation, objects moving through space, objects contained within other objects, etc. These experiences can be described by using phrasal verbs, most of which are literal. We directly experience the world by moving in it, as it was created by nature. On the other hand, many ideas are not accessible through our body directly. In order to access these ideas, we must think about them by conceptualizing them in terms of something in our own mind. For instance, we think of the time in terms of money, running out of time. This process of thinking and speaking about one thing in terms of another is called conceptual metaphors, and they are used to form idiomatic phrasal verbs. The way idiomatic meanings are formed is through metaphorical mapping. When their literal meanings are extended to abstract, non-visible domains, such as thoughts, intentions, feelings, attitudes, relations, social and economic interactions. While it isn't common to think of prepositions and adverbs being metaphorical, they actually do have metaphorical meanings that are derived from a central meaning. By focusing on prepositions and adverbs, you will learn that by knowing the literal meaning of a phrasal verb, we can extend it to an idiomatic meaning as well. The main point is to focus on particles. For instance, our understanding of up can be reflected literally in the phrasal verb sit up. Up here refers to the literal direction the body moves with the action of sitting. Can you sit up straight, please? This particle can also be extended metaphorically, as with the phrasal verb clean up. Here, up takes on the new meaning of completion. You should be downstairs, helping your friend clean up that mess. The two meanings, the literal up and idiomatic completion, are not separate, unrelated meanings. The latter has been metaphorically mapped onto the prototypical meaning. The particle down has a literal meaning of a movement through space, downwards, as seen in the phrasal verb put down. Sweetie, just put down the tray. Whereas an idiomatic meaning of the particle down is a reduction in quantity. This can be demonstrated with the help of a phrasal verb cut down. The neighbors want us to cut down some trees in our yard. The literal meaning of the particle on is the contact between two surfaces. It can be greatly demonstrated with the help of the phrasal verb to put on. For instance, you could put on some glasses, no one would notice. An idiomatic meaning of on is support. Look at this exciting show and cheer on the athletes. It was extended from the literal to the idiomatic. By the way, you can make as many extensions as possible and you want. It all depends on the phrasal verb. In this video, I only give examples using one extension, but there can be several. Just a side note. The particle of is the opposite of on, because a literal meaning is the loss of contact between two surfaces, the opposite. If you're here to visit, your shoes have to come off. At the same time, an idiomatic meaning is a movement away from a current condition. This is a more abstract comparison with the literal meaning. When your habits change, you may have to cut off old relationships. As you can see, these meanings are really connected. We only need to extend the literal meanings. As I always like to repeat to my students, the more you practice, the better you become. The following two particles, in and out, are the opposite as well. When talking about them, it's better to think of a container. The literal meaning of in can be best depicted as an external object inside the container. You may get to stay in a castle tonight, if you are lucky. If we extend the literal meaning to the idiomatic, the meaning becomes getting involved in an activity. All the members of the interviewing panel joined in with questions. As previously stated, the particle out is opposite to the particle in. This results in the idea that something isn't in a container or is absent from the container as for the literal meaning. She wasn't allowed to go out and play with the other kids. An idiomatic meaning is the idea of discovering a fact or piece of information for the gap in the container. For example, the verb to find out clearly shows this type of meaning. She'd been seeing him for a while, but didn't want her parents to find out. When we are talking about the particle round or around, a literal meaning means moving in a circular motion. Don't let him run around in the mud. An idiomatic meaning is avoidance. It was extended from the literal meaning to the idiomatic meaning of trying to escape by circulating in an abstract motion. It's powerfully depicted with the help of the following example. The police can skate around the issues. The literal idea of the particle back means going back into the past. He wants to go back to the time when he was at school. In contrast, an idiomatic meaning is the idea of stopping progress. I need someone to hold me back when I'm overcome with passion. The literal meaning of the particle over means moving over an obstacle. When you see the signal, you will have 30 seconds to get over the fence. An idiomatic meaning is the idea of covering something. Oceans could potentially freeze over during extremely cold periods. The last particle for today is through, the literal meaning of which is going from one end or side of something to the other. Just go listen through the walls. An idiomatic meaning is the idea of termination. We need to think through each move and come up with an accurate analysis of our opponents. All in all, the random meanings of phrasal verbs are not as random as you may have thought. Their meanings can be seen as motivated by metaphors. To non-native English speakers like you and me, this metaphorical mapping can be difficult to recognize. As English learners don't often see the path between literal and idiomatic meanings, many find phrasal verbs challenging to understand. The metaphorical mapping is something native English speakers understand without any difficulty. It's embedded in their conceptual frameworks. For those from another language background, implicit metaphors can be incredibly difficult to identify. English phrasal verbs have a more profound logic and deeper meaning. Once it's decoded with a comprehensible explanation, their meanings become understandable. You need to think more broadly, extending literal meanings to idiomatic. With time and practice, it will become easier and you will be able to understand the majority of phrasal verbs. I think this method is incredible, and by developing our logic and reasoning, we can advance on our journey of learning the English language. I really hope that you have found this video helpful. Subscribe if you're new, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you soon. Bye!